What did you do? I stopped in the laundry room doorway at 10:47 p.m., staring at my navy blazer soaking in the sink. A pale orange bleach stain spread across the front like someone had poured acid over my future. Melissa stood beside it holding the bottle. She shrugged. It slipped. I looked at her, then at the blazer. It was hanging in my bedroom. Mom rushed in before Melissa could answer. "Destiny, your interview is tomorrow. Stop making a scene over a jacket." "A jacket," I snapped. "This is my only blazer." Dad appeared behind her, already annoyed with me. "Then you should have bought another one if this interview was so important." I stared at him. For months, I'd worked evenings to cover medical school application fees, transportation, and everything else they said they couldn't afford. Yet only weeks earlier, they'd handed Melissa thousands toward nursing school. "Tell her to replace it tonight," I said. Mom folded her arms. "We're not spending money because you two can't get along." Melissa set the bleach down and walked away. No apology. No consequence. Nothing. That was the moment something in me shifted. By midnight, I had tried stain remover, cold water, even carefully covering the damage with a scarf. Nothing worked. The bleach had permanently stripped the color from the fabric. I finally stopped fighting it. I hung the blazer over my chair and stared at it. Then I said quietly, "Fine, I'm wearing it." The next morning, every applicant in the medical school lobby looked polished. Pressed suits, clean jackets, perfect shoes. And then there was me. I caught two people glancing at the bleach mark as I checked in, but I kept my shoulders straight. I had spent years shrinking myself so my family could stay comfortable. I wasn't missing this interview because Melissa wanted me embarrassed. When my name was called, I entered the office of Dean Samuel Whitmore. He asked about my clinical volunteering, my grades, why I wanted medicine. I answered every question. Then his eyes dropped to my blazer. My stomach tightened. He looked back at my application. Then at the name, printed across the top. Destiny Carter. His expression changed. "Carter." He leaned closer to the file. Then he looked directly at me. "Wait." His voice had lost its formal tone. "You're her." I blinked. "Whose?" And suddenly, I wasn't worried about the bleach stain anymore. I was wondering why a medical school dean recognized a family connection my parents had never once mentioned. Dean Whitmore leaned back slowly. "Dr. Evelyn Carter," he said. "Was she your grandmother?" For a second, I forgot I was sitting in an interview. "Yes." His expression shifted again. Not warmer exactly. More puzzled. "She graduated from this school," he said. "Years ago, she stayed involved with our alumni foundation for a long time." I stared at him. My parents had always talked about Grandma Evelyn like she'd been a retired physician who lived modestly and left almost nothing behind. Dad used to say, "Your grandmother believed in hard work, not handouts." I had never questioned it. Dean Whitmore folded his hands. "She talked about you often." "Me?" He nodded. "She was very proud of your academic plans, especially medicine." Something cold moved through my stomach. Grandma had died when I was 16. I remembered her asking about my science classes, bringing me old medical journals, telling me I had steady hands. But my parents had never once said she'd remained connected to this school. Then Dean Whitmore asked casually, "Did the education fund make the application process easier?" I stopped breathing. "The what?" His face tightened. "The education fund." I stared at him. "What education fund?" Silence filled the room. Dean Whitmore's posture changed immediately. He looked down at my file, then back at me. "You truly don't know what I'm referring to." I shook my head. He became careful. "Professional. This isn't something I should discuss in detail during an admissions interview," he said. "There are privacy issues involved." My hands tightened in my lap. But there are records. Yes. Connected to my grandmother. Yes. And me. He paused. Yes. My heart started pounding. He glanced once more at the ruined blazer. What happened to your jacket? I hesitated. My sister poured bleach on it last night. Accident. No. And you still came. My parents told me to stop making a scene. I didn't have another blazer. He studied me for a moment, then simply said, "You showed up prepared, that matters." And the interview continued. No favors. No special treatment. He questioned me about clinical volunteering, ethics, patient communication, and why I wanted to become a doctor. I answered everything, but one sentence kept repeating in my head. Education fund. The second I stepped outside, I called Mom. She answered on the fourth ring. Did Grandma leave an education fund for me? Nothing. Not even breathing. Then Mom said quietly, "We'll talk about this when you get home." Mom. The call ended. She had hung up on me. When I got home, nobody pretended everything was normal. Dad sat at the dining table with Mom beside him. Melissa was across from them, staring at her phone. Dad didn't even let me put my bag down. Why are you digging into old family finances? I froze. I had asked Mom one question. Apparently, that had been enough to trigger a family meeting. Dean Whitmore knew Grandma Evelyn, I said. He mentioned an education fund she created for me. Melissa's head snapped toward Mom. Not toward me. Mom. I caught it immediately. You knew. Melissa looked down. Dad pushed his chair back. Your grandmother left some money. Your mother and I managed it. How much? Neither of them answered. Dad, how much? That's not the point. It became the point when nobody told me it existed. Mom sighed. Destiny, raising children costs money. Sometimes families have to move things around. I stared at her. She hadn't denied using it. All those years they had told me there wasn't enough money for my tuition suddenly felt different. Show me the statements. Dad's jaw tightened. No. Why? Because we were your parents. We made the decisions we believed were necessary. I'm 24. I've been paying my own educational expenses for years. Mom immediately glanced at Melissa. Your sister needs support too. I turned toward her. Support from what? Melissa shoved her phone onto the table. It's not like all my tuition came from your money. The room went completely silent. I hadn't mentioned her tuition. Not once. Melissa seemed to realize it a second too late. I looked at Mom. Then Dad. You used Grandma's money to pay for Melissa. Dad stood. Enough. He gathered several papers from the table. One slipped from the stack. I saw a financial institution's name across the top and a reference number beneath it. I pulled out my phone. Destiny, don't. Click. I photographed it before Dad snatched the paper away. Then I picked up my bag. Mom called after me, but I kept walking. Dad followed me to the front door. If you start investigating this, Destiny, you're going to tear this family apart. I stopped with my hand on the door. Then I looked back at him. Then maybe I'm not the one who broke it. The next morning, I called the institution printed on the document before anyone in my family could stop me. After several identity verification questions, the administrator said, Ms. Carter, I've located the account. I gripped my phone. So it exists. Yes, you are the named beneficiary of an education trust established by Evelyn Carter. My stomach dropped. How much? The original funding was approximately $90,000. 90,000. I thought about every extra shift I had worked, every application I had delayed because I couldn't afford another fee. The blazer I had bought with my own money because my parents said there was nothing available to help me. Meanwhile, Melissa had tuition payments, clothes, apartment expenses, even help with her car. Why didn't I know? The administrator paused. According to the records, once I turned 18, I should have been informed about distributions connected to my education. Instead, there had been multiple withdrawals. Where did the money go? I can't make a determination about every transaction yet, she said, but several expenditures require review. Some dates lined up disturbingly close to Melissa's tuition payments. Others appeared connected to family expenses. My hand tightened around the phone. I want a full accounting. And would you like to formally dispute the withdrawals? I didn't hesitate. Yes. That changed everything. Further distributions were frozen pending review. Within hours, Mom called repeatedly. Dad left messages demanding I withdraw the dispute. Then Melissa texted, "My semester payment was rejected. What did you do?" I stared at those words. Now I understood the panic. Later, the administrator contacted me again. Dean Whitmore had provided historical foundation documentation connected to Grandma Evelyn. Her intention was written clearly. The money was meant for my education asterisk, especially if I pursued medicine. Dad's claim that it had simply been family money was beginning to collapse. That evening, I sat with the preliminary accounting open in front of me. My phone rang. The trust administrator. I answered immediately. "Ms. Carter," she said, "we finished tracing the withdrawals." I sat completely still. Then she added, "There's something you need to see." The completed accounting answered every question my parents had refused to answer. Grandma Evelyn had created the trust specifically for me. Not for the family. Not for household expenses. Not for Melissa. For my education. The original amount had been approximately $90,000, with clear instructions that it was meant to support my higher education, particularly if I pursued medicine. My parents knew. After I turned 18, they continued controlling the information surrounding the account. They never told me what I was entitled to know, even while money was being withdrawn. And the accounting showed where significant portions had gone. Family expenses. Payments that benefited Melissa. Transactions that lined up with periods when I had been told, again and again, "We can't afford to help you." I thought about that ruined blazer. Melissa had poured bleach on it because she wanted me walking into the biggest interview of my life, looking like I didn't belong there. Instead, I wore it. Dean Whitmore noticed it, looked more closely at my application, recognized Grandma's name, and asked the one question nobody in my family expected me to hear. The blazer hadn't gotten me into medical school. It had simply led me toward the truth. I printed the accounting and went home for one final conversation. Dad barely looked at the documents. Mom did. Her face changed as she turned through the pages. "We were trying to give both our daughters a future," she said. I stared at her. "You gave her a future using mine." Melissa looked between us. "So what happens to my tuition?" That was her first question. Not, "Did they really take your money?" Not, "Why didn't anyone tell you?" Her tuition. "My next semester is already messed up because of this," she said. And right there, I understood something. She still believed my sacrifice was supposed to be automatic. "I worked while you were being supported with money Grandma left for me," I said. "You'll have to arrange your tuition the same way I arranged mine." I refused to withdraw the dispute. The remaining trust funds were placed under my control, where my parents could no longer access them. Through the trust's legal process, Mom and Dad were held responsible for repaying expenditures determined to have violated its terms. That meant changes. Real ones. They cut discretionary spending and entered a repayment arrangement. Melissa could no longer depend on money that had never belonged to her. She applied for financial aid, started working, and made her own tuition arrangements. Then, weeks later, another message arrived. This one was from the medical school. I opened it alone. Accepted. I read the word twice. Then a third time. Dean Whitmore had made something important clear throughout the process. Grandma's connection to the school had not earned me admission. My grades did. My clinical experience did. My interview did. I had walked into that room wearing a bleach-stained blazer and still earned my place. And now, for the first time, the money Grandma intended for my education could actually be used for my education. I moved out. I established financial boundaries with my parents and stopped allowing family to mean surrendering whatever belonged to me. Dad lost control of my finances. Mom could no longer pressure me into subsidizing Melissa. And Melissa learned that sabotaging my opportunities didn't make those opportunities hers. But I kept the blazer. Months later, before my first major medical school presentation, I opened my closet. The damaged navy jacket hung in the back. Beside it was a new blazer I'd bought with money that legally belonged to me. I reached toward the old one for a moment. Then I smiled softly and took the new one instead. I didn't need to wear the ruined blazer anymore. I kept it because it reminded me of the night my family tried to make me look unworthy and accidentally gave me the clue that exposed everything. They ruined my only blazer to keep me from walking into my future. I wore it anyway and walked out with the truth that gave my future back to me.